Hi there, my name's Austin, and I want to talk to you about the new feature in ARM Treasure Data, specifically the policy-based permissions feature that allows you to set permissions for individual users assigned to different groups so you can manage which users in your accounts have access to which sets of data. This is particularly important and relevant in today's modern marketing environment where we have to worry about privacy compliance laws like GDPR and others around the world. So maybe you don't want to give all users access to all data or even all sections of the Treasure Data website. So you can give individual users access to only certain subsets of data or certain actions they can perform on the website, such as workflows, editing master segments, or just engaging with overall data. What we're going to do in this video is walk through several different user profiles from an admin to an end user and show you how it looks from an admin's perspective and end user's perspective and show you a couple different use cases you can use. So now I'm going to jump behind the camera and show you it being driven from my laptop. So I'll be back right now. So here we've logged into an account that has the policy-based permissions feature enabled. You can check that by clicking on your settings tab, and then under administration you should see this policies tab appear. You can then click on it and see these fields. By default, these fields will be unpopulated on an empty account, but clearly we've got some demo data in here. So next we're going to show you how to create a policy. You do that by going up here to the Actions button, clicking on it, and then clicking on Create Policy. In this field, you can then give your policy a relevant name and description that is relevant so you can figure out what you did later. Typically, we'll see these broken down by regions, such as US East, US West, etc. Once you've filled this out, go ahead and click the Save button. So now that we've created the policy, we're going to need to set permissions for that policy. You do that by going over to the Permissions tab. And in the Permissions tab, you have 3 different fields you can fill in. This section right here relates to anything to do with the workflows. So in this policy, you can give them the ability to view, run, or edit workflows. This next section gives you the ability to create master segments or just view them and use them. And this final section gives you permissions for Audience Studio, which is typically the marketer-focused tool. In general, this first gray box up here breaks down for engineering, and in general, this second gray box breaks down for digital marketers and front-facing people who want to use the different segments. So this is how you can break up and segment the permissions in your account to allow your data engineers to provide data, but not necessarily have direct access to the segments you're creating. And likewise, you can firewall away your marketers from your engineers so they don't have to deal with all the SQL code. In this example, we're going to give this policy full access to Audience Studio. By doing this, Audience Studio will show up underneath all users in this segment so they can access it. If they don't have full access, they won't even notice that Audience Studio exists. Once you've clicked this, it is now autosave, so you don't have to worry about anything else. Next up, we need to apply this to individual users. For that, we'll go to the Applied To tab. Under the Applied To tab, we're going to click on this Edit button, and this will allow us to add users to the policy. As you can see on this tab, you can scroll through all of the users in your account and easily add them one by one or en masse. You would then click this arrow to add them. In this example, we've already assigned this policy to Sam. He's the CMO, and so there's no one else in this policy. So that's the end of this setup. We now have our Chief Marketing Officer set up as the only user in this policy, so then they can go off and do things. Next up, we're going to log in as the Chief Marketing Officer and show you what it looks like to add sub-users as the CMO. Yep. So now we're switching over to the Chief Marketing Officer's account, which looks like this. We can now see what the Chief Marketing Officer would see. So next up, let's see what Sam can see, our CMO. If we go into the Audience Studio section and click on Segments, we can see all the segments that Sam has access to. Over here you can see the different folders that he has access to, and over here you can see the different master segments that he's been given access to. In this example, our company is a global company and has customers in EU, Japan, Korea, and the United States. So as our CMO, Sam obviously has access to all of the master segments. So next up, let's take a look at what the viewport looks like for an EU employee. We're going to do that by switching our profile to the EU employee. This is what the EU employee profile looks like. In this case, his name is Mark. Underneath Mark's profile, we can see all the segments that he has access to. Underneath Mark's profile, he still has access to different folders, but in this case, only the EU folders. And if you look under his master segment, he only has access to the EU master segment. By doing this, because Mark is an EU employee, we only wanted him to have access to EU customer information so that we can comply with global and local privacy regulations. So next up, let's take a look at what it looks like to be a contractor. You only want to give them access to certain subsections. So now we've switched over to John, who's our consultant freelancer. For John, we don't want to give him access to everything necessarily, so let's go take a look at what he has in his segments. For John, we've only given him access to one folder. He doesn't even have access to the full master segment list, just that specific folder that's relevant to this area that he is working on for us as a contractor. This is one of the most powerful features of policy-based permissions, being able to still leverage a global workforce, but restrict what they can work on so you're in compliance with all the global regulations, and you can prevent your valuable data from accidentally being taken out of your company by your contractors. So that's it for this video. If you're interested in policy-based permissions, please reach out to your local sales team for a discussion about how to add it to your account.